Welcome to GV247.tv, the Global Vision Channel, a non-profit web TV channel bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live.
Hello and a warm welcome to a Global Vision TV special. Now, these are occasional Channel 1 weekend prog interviews of special interest to many viewers. And this week, we're taking a look at Asperger Syndrome. Now, even if you don't know anything about the subject, it really will be worth staying around, as you may well recognise it once you know what it is. Now, Asperger's is a form of autism, which is a developmental issue, and it causes challenges in social skills recognised by differences in the brain. Now, it can be caused by environmental, biological, or genetic factors, and it first came to my attention many years ago. I heard a programme on my car radio one day, and I quickly recognised the symptoms were actually mildly present in somebody I knew. And a light bulb came on as I realised that this person didn't just have the cold logic and sometimes a lack of emotion that I thought they had, but they actually had a slightly different worldview. And the more I understood the subject, the better I would be able to relate to them. Now, over the years, I've met many Christians with varying degrees of this syndrome. Now, I saw that those dear brothers and sisters with the milder version had so much to recommend them as loyal and extremely logical brethren, seeing things in black and white with no shades of grey, which is useful for interpreting scripture, I've learned. However, as the years have gone by, I've realised that at least 1 out of every 3 people I meet have many aspects of it, and many can have quite severe challenges. And as Christians, we ought to recognise this and give a leeway of grace in most cases. So, what is it? Now, Wikipedia describes it as a neurodevelopmental condition, and it's characterised by difficulties in social interaction and non-verbal communication, along with restricted and repetitive patterns of behaviour and interests. So there's a kind of a clinical definition of it. WebMD states that when you meet someone who has Asperger syndrome, you might notice 2 things right off. They're just as smart as other folks. In fact, many I know are smarter, but they have more trouble with social skills. Now, they also tend to have an obsessive focus on one topic or perform the same behaviours again and again. Not always, but it's there in many cases. Now, doctors used to think of Asperger's as a separate condition to other forms of autism, but in 2013, that edition of the standard book that mental health experts use is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM. It changed how it was classified, and today, Asperger syndrome is technically no longer a diagnosis on its own. It's now part of a broader category called Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. Now, this group of related disorders shares some symptoms, but even so, lots of people still use the term Asperger's. Don't worry, this is not a medical program. I'm nearly there. Now, the condition is what doctors call a high-functioning type of ASD, and this means that the symptoms are less severe than other kinds of autism spectrum disorders, and lots of famous people have it, which brings me to today, because we're going to meet a brother in Christ who appears to have embraced his Asperger's, and he's made his own YouTube channel explaining what life is like for him. Just search for Midnight Mule, because that's his online name. But Stuart and I know him as Juice, and he's been a Christian most of his life and a really dear friend of ours since the late 90s. He's worked at the top end of IT and coding and ran his own company for years. Okay, yes, he's always just been a little eccentric. But when he came to visit us last year, he came out the closet, so to speak. He told us he had Asperger's. And I knew right away I'd love to interview him. So welcome, Juice. And it's great to see you again, albeit across the interweb. Now, one of the first questions you're probably asked is, why do some people call you Juice?
All right then. Good afternoon. Nice to be here. when I was at school, junior school, so I guess just turned 11, randomly a couple of people in the class were giving people random names based on their initials. And they started calling me Juicy Babes. And then when I went to big school, which is when you're 11, so do your O-levels, etc., the first day I registered, the teacher went round and said, I'm going to call your name out and let me know if you've got a nickname. So when she came to me, I said, oh, my nickname's Juicy Babes. And she said, I'm not going to call you that. I'll just call you Juice. So it actually comes from a teacher.
What I'd like to do first, Juice, is discuss what various aspects of life are like for you in the world. And hopefully towards the end of this program, what it's like to be a Christian with Asperger's and how you're treated in church. And I believe some of it may be a little uncomfortable for viewers. So let's get started. So could you just tell me, first of all, Juice, when, why, and how were you diagnosed?
I think I was diagnosed in 2016. So maybe a year or so before that, I was more and more aware of it from different things I'd seen online. Now, randomly, maybe 10 or more years ago, 15 years ago, I took an online ASPE test and it gave me a very high score, which said I was ASPE. And I thought, well, that's just stupid as an online test. So I thought no more of it. But then there were, I think, I don't know if I'm going to remember them all, but there were 3 key things that happened within a very short space of time that made me think, okay, I'm definitely different to other people here. So I'll see if I can remember them. One of them is I found out that people enjoy going on holiday. Now, as in going away somewhere. For me, holidays were always there to be endured, not enjoyed. It's like, I'm happy at home. I want to be at home. Some people count down to how many days before they go away. When I'm on holiday, I'm always counting down how many days before I can go back home. So holidays are a massively negative experience for me. And I didn't realize that it wasn't for other people. I genuinely thought people at work, for example, go to somewhere abroad on holiday so that they can tell people I've been on holiday, look at my photos. And I didn't appreciate that people actually enjoy going on holiday. And then again, in a very short space of time, there was in our local village, all 3 kids were in this drama class on Saturdays. They're putting together some drama presentation for Christmas. And I had to go along with that because parents have to go and watch this. And my wife's mother was down across from Nottingham to watch it as well. And I asked her if she wanted to see it, and she did. And she genuinely wanted to watch the kids in this production, whatever it was. And then I asked a couple of other people, and they actually wanted to see the kids in the production, whereas I didn't care less about it. So it was my kids. I genuinely want them to be happy with what they're doing. I hope they have a nice time being in this play. I couldn't care less about seeing them in the play, though. It doesn't mean I don't love them. It's like there are so many other things I would rather be doing than watching 20 kids, of which 3 are mine, of which some of the time they have dialogue. I don't care about that. And so there was that. And then there was somebody at work who went to church, different church to mine. I was chatting to him and I found out that he actually enjoyed going to church. And I really struggled with church. So in a very short space of time, these 3 things reared their head and it's like, okay, something's very different here. So then I went back and looked at, I think, the ASPE stuff, did another online test and again scored high. So then I looked into the whole getting diagnosed side of things. And in the UK, the process, as I understood it, certainly back then, certainly in England, was you'd go to your doctor, have a chat with them, and it's up to them if they think they send you for a referral. And if they decide they will, that could be like a 2-year process. And there's another big, long process after that. And I was thinking, I haven't got time for that. Either I am or I'm not. I want to know. So I then went down a private route, cost a few £100s to do it. And a shrink won't see you straight away. So I had to see somebody who would give a pre-diagnosis. And then they would recommend to the psychiatrist, I think this person probably is. And then I had to then see the psychiatrist. And so that was all very interesting. And it came out, yeah, you're definitely ASPE.
There's lots of so-called symptoms. So let's go through them, those which you're familiar with. Now, this might mean making a part 2 to this program, we'll see. But let's start with the perceived or real, your lack of social skills. You know, Juice, that's really been helpful, what you've already spoken about. Right, first of all, eye contact. Tell us about eye contact. Is that something you find easy? Is it difficult?
As an ASPE, when you're an undiagnosed ASPE, you're 100% unaware, probably, that you lack social skills. I was completely unaware. I was aware that I sometimes offended people, which I didn't understand. It's only once you get diagnosed and you read about it, things fall into place and you realize, okay, so in social situations, I have issues here, or people perceive me differently to how I think I'm coming across. So eye contact, absolutely, looking in someone's eyes in real life is really difficult. But now across the screen, somehow it's different. It's a bit like watching a movie. I can comfortably look at your eyes and it's not a problem. And it's like it's way too much information. I can either think when I'm in a conversation and look around while I'm thinking, while I'm talking, and occasionally look at you, or I can look at you, but then I'm using a lot of brain power trying to filter out all this noise that's going on from your eyes, which might sound a bit weird, but it's just a complete overload, which I think ties into the whole another ASPE thing, which is to do with we generally do not pick up on body language, on cues to do with the way people move, but also inflections in their speech. And part of that, a neurotypical person will pick up facial tics and things to do with the eye movement that we're blind to. And it's just too much information. I think it's all tied. But yes, eye contact is really difficult. So when we're aware at ASPE, we have to think, oh, have I used the eyes recently? So I have to look back. And it's like, oh, is that too long? Need to look away. And it's really difficult. So our minds are constantly processing, how should I be interacting with this person? Whereas a neurotypical would just be relaxed and interacting.
I would like to know about your superpowers.
The obvious one for me would be pattern recognition and numbers. So numbers always came easy to me. So when my dad had his own little farm, and when I was, certainly by the time I was 7, I used to work on the farm, and it was in the south coast. So it's a little island called Thorney Island off a place called Emsworth. And I used to serve customers, but we didn't have a till. It was simply a drawer that had cash in it. And most people serving customers would then have to write down half a dozen of these eggs, dozen those eggs, write it all down, work it out. And then they give them change, they work out the change. Whereas I would just dink, 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 this much, bang, there's your change, next person. But it's like, why can people not do that in your head? And I used to make fun of my mum. She didn't seem to mind that she would write down things when she was working them out. It's like, why didn't you just do it in your head? And she used to take me, I used to go to the local shops, and it wasn't a supermarket. You'd go to the butchers, you'd go to the grocers, all these separate shops. And sometimes she'd get several things. We'd go to the checkout and I'd say, oh, that's £3.42. And the lady would be, oh, I just checked that. And then she'd type it all in the till. It wasn't electronic back then. And it was £3.42, whatever I said. And like, I'm like 5 or 6 doing this. And I would just always be doing numbers in my head. Something else, which I know a lot of Christians won't appreciate me saying this, so you might want to edit it out. My dad used to buy newspaper, and in the back, it had horse racing and the odds, which are always written as fractionals, like 7-2 or 5-2, whatever it is. And I understood what the odds meant. And I think I was 7 at the time. And I thought, I wonder if it's possible to bet different amounts on each horse so that whichever horse comes in, you'd make a profit. So I looked at, and this is me as a 7-year-old, worked it all out, looked at 2, 3, 4 different races, and every single time you would make a loss. There's a certain margin for the bookies, might be 5%. But that was me just doing it on my own out of interest. I wonder if it's possible. And the answer was no. And of course, it turns out the house or the book takes a certain amount, the bookies would take some. And that was just me doing it for fun. I wonder. And then like a few years later at school, they'd be teaching fractions. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, come on. It's like, it's so easy. So numbers, patterns, if there was a superpower, it'd be that. It comes very, very easy to me.
So I know you are really good with numbers, and in fact the whole coding thing seemed to come easy to you when you were working on the interweb all these years ago, which I know you still are involved in. Now, Jess, what about interests? How important, or in fact, could you tell me about obsessions as well? You can speak about
sure.
both.
You call them special interests. They're really obsessions. There'll be a certain thing I'm obsessed with that, and it may be for a day or 2 days. It could be for years. It could be any amount of time. And there's a certain amount of switching on and off. It can get expensive because an ASPE may get really interested in a particular hobby, spend a lot of time and money on it, and just lose interest. because there's this new shiny toy over there. And so because I'm aware that I'm Aspie, I'm also aware I need to be careful and not get too interested in this, that, or the other. Sorry, that was quite general. An example of switching an interest on and off, when I was doing my A-levels as in Chichester, I used to get a train with a friend and we'd walk from the train station to the college and we'd pass by cars. This was in like the mid-80s. And he'd say, oh, that's a Ford Escort Mark III, or that's a Fiat, this, that, the other, whatever else. I had no interest in cars, but he would point out 2 or 3 cars because he'd learned a bit about cars. So I bought this magazine from the newsagents of all the cars currently sold in Britain. And there was like a few hundred. And I read it a few times, naturally memorized it without realizing other people couldn't do this. And then we're off the train. I'd say something about every single car, the engine size and the top speed, all these different things. So I'd read about it. And I did that because I didn't like it and I wanted to shut him up. And it did shut him up because once he knew I knew more than him, that just killed the conversation. So you can turn it on and off a bit. So I did that to stop him talking about it.
Juice. I'm wondering if you were a little bit of a pain to be around. Just having that knowledge and it coming off so simply. But I know that there's always a downside to these things as well. I mean, what about mental focus and concentration?
There's hyperfocus. If I'm interested in something, nothing else exists. I'm completely concentrating on that. But we're very much can only concentrate on one thing at a time. So I could be deep in focus. There's lots of things going on in my memory and cache, if you like, this, that, and the other. And if someone comes in and says, oh, can I just disturb you a minute? Or are you busy? Bang, it goes. And it's a huge interruption. So, I mean, I've got a sign on the door here, like, leave me alone, basically, in the study. But yeah, so hyperfocus, we can only think about one thing at a time, which for me now, as I'm getting older, is getting more and more of a problem because my short-term memory, I don't know if it's because of Aspergers or for other reasons, is absolutely shot at the moment. And somebody can ask me to do something. I say, yeah, okay, I'll turn. And I forgot I even had the conversation. But if I'm focusing on something, I can really, really get into it. But it's very easy to get distracted because so many other things are more interesting.
Just, what about sensory issues? Do you have challenges with that?
Yeah, touch, so on the skin, has always been an issue. So clothes used to be uncomfortable. We used to have hand-me-down clothes. Used to sometimes have woolen trousers, like 3 or 4 generations down the line. And school trousers were itchy. So for as long as I could at school, I'd wear shorts because trousers itched me. When I had to wear long trousers, I used to wear my pajama trousers underneath them. So there's this like nice soft layer. And of course, nobody at school knew I was doing this because they would have obviously making a lot of fun of me. And then as soon as it was nearly freezing or slightly over, I'd have the shorts back on again. So clothes back then were uncomfortable, and now many clothes are uncomfortable still. So I'm really restricted to what I can wear. So I wondered what I should wear for you today. I thought I could try and put a shirt on. I thought I might really struggle wearing a shirt for a long time. So I've just got this t-shirt on now. So sensory touch, really, really uncomfortable. Hearing is getting worse for me. Sound, the best way to describe it is some sounds hurt. And it's pain, as in if somebody's scratching you or pinching you, it actually hurts. And I'm getting more sensitive as I'm getting older. So certain sounds really, really hurt me. So I have to be really careful. And this makes me more and more unsociable because certain things in life, they could just be sound where it's like, I just can't handle the sound. It's like a complete overload. So I give you an example from church. You'll be in church and some of the sound systems in church aren't set up right. So they're either got too much high end and no middle and bass. And the high end sort of really, really hurts me the most. Sometimes the way they've got the speakers facing and the microphone, you every now and then get this feedback, which is irritating to normal people, but just an Aspie where sound hurts, it's like it's unbearable. It's not just volume. There could be loud sounds and I'm fine. It's certain frequencies and certain types of sound. And I hate the sound of eating. I know some neurotypicals dislike the sound of eating, but I really dislike it to the point that I can't actually be near someone who, if I can hear them eating, it's just I have to walk away. But something good about being a grown-up man is I can leave a situation, and I don't care about social convention. If I can't handle something, I'm off. So that's those two. Lights, vision has never affected me, and I'm very grateful for that. I am aware of some Aspergers are affected by fluorescent lights or flashing lights or certain colors. Our youngest daughter is Asperger, and she's also got Erland syndrome, which isn't unusual for Aspergers. So she has certain visionary things. Taste, my sense of taste used to be very acute. It's not so bad now, but that might not be Asperger related. That might just be, as kids, a lot of kids are fussy eaters, they're called. It's like certain things that make me feel sick. In what sense haven't I touched? Smell. Oh yeah. Certain smells really trigger me, and it's always chemical smells. So certain cleaning products, whether it's bleach or other things, really affect me. So an example from just last week, I go to a chess club, and we recently moved venue. So a really nice building, walked in there, and straight away I was hit with a chemical smell. And it might be because it's a new build, or it might be something the cleaners did. And I just started feeling dizzy. And I sat down to play my first game. It was only like 25-minute each game. And I was wondering if I was going to actually pass out. And it was because of the smell. Now, it's not something, obviously there's no poison in the chemical that's affecting other people, and no one else was affected by this, but it was really bad. So sound is the worst, and then probably touch, but I can be careful what I wear, and then smells are really bad. I think that's all 5 senses I've done.
Listen, just going back a wee bit in time again, I mean, your school experiences, was there, what was that like for you?
Negative, largely. Again, because I didn't know I was Asperger, I was in no way holding back with what I said, because now I'm aware that I've hurt so many people in my past unintentionally. I wasn't aware that the words I was saying was hurting them, because had they said them to me, it was either factually correct or incorrect. It might have been humorous, and it wouldn't have affected me. But to them, because they've got feelings, and in my mind they've got egos. For an Asperger, neurotypicals have massive egos. That's something else that you might want to be aware of, because they get hurt so easily. And it's like, it's ridiculous. And so certainly the way that I can't think of the right word to say it now. The way I make that make sense in my mind is they've just got a big ego, and anything you say is going to upset them. So yeah, at school, I said a lot of things that offended people. We were poor, and my dad died when I was 10. And so I was wearing my brother's clothes when he was too big. He was 2 years older than me, and he got them from a cousin who got them from another cousin from another cousin. And when you're at school, especially big school, so 11 to 16, fashion is really important. And people don't want to be associated with a kid who's wearing fashion that's 2 years old. And in the mid-80s, I was wearing clothes from the early 70s. So the fashion was stay-pressed trousers. Everyone had these really tight trousers at the bottom. I was wearing flared 70s bell-bottom trousers. To a point, I had no choice. So at school, people who didn't even know me in different years were making fun of me because of the way I looked. So I had a couple of friends who really didn't care about the way I looked. One of them genuinely didn't care about it. The other one, I found out later, wanted to be friends with me because he found out earlier I was smart and he wanted to do well. But then when he got to know me, we were genuine friends. And then when I was about 15, I had a paper round and I bought my own clothes. So I then wore clothes that were more acceptable. And suddenly people were talking to me, wanted to be friends with me and liked me. And that just reinforced my feeling that people are shallow and insincere, which is, I don't know if we're going to go into MBTI or not, but until I learned about the MBTI, everyone was one type of person that's shallow and insincere, because the way you looked really mattered to other people and if they'd interact with you. And I'm not talking about wearing offensive T-shirts with offensive logos. It's just the 80s, you had thin collars. I had these big collars down here. And it's like, I'm the same person. I'm the same person. And I've got the same whatever else as if I was wearing different clothes, but people can't see it. So that's the clothes side. The lesson side, a lot of lessons, obviously I found really slow. It'd be like, come on, quicker. Especially maths. Maths was ridiculous. And then what was difficult was I was obviously in the top set for maths. Sometimes the teacher say something, you'd go through the lesson and I'd obviously work through the questions very quickly. Somebody might put their hand up and say, "Excuse me, miss, I don't understand. Can you explain this thing again?" And I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh, come on." It's like, it's not difficult. But now I know, I appreciate people do need to sometimes hear things more than once. And I now understand some people don't get it. But to me, it just came so easy. So that was difficult. But it's a lesson I was very bad at was languages. I'm hopeless at language. So French and any other language, extremely bad. But some Aspies, they can just pick up languages like no one's British. They're really good at languages, or they're really good at art, but they're useless at numbers. So I was very blessed and fortunate that my superpower was numbers, because with numbers, things like maths, physics, chemistry, they come easily. And in the real world, people want people that can code and are good at maths and can think. I could be the really, really good at art, and I can't. I have to wait on tables, because you can't get a lot of money if you're good at art, or if you're good at singing, you need a really lucky break. So I was fortunate that the thing I was good at is actually in high demand. So yeah, lessons were slow. Teachers, I would guess that, let's talk about big school. I keep calling it big school. About a third of the teachers loved me and 2/3 of the teachers hated me and found me really annoying. And looking back, I think of it as the smart teachers liked me, because I would challenge them. I would ask questions, not to be difficult, but I don't understand this, or what about that? And they didn't mind being challenged. They didn't mind being told they were wrong. But other teachers did not like to be pointed out that something was wrong that they said. And I used to get sent out of some lessons. So as an Aspie, we take things literally, even if we know it's an idiom. Our first interpretation is literal, and then hang on, that might be an idiom. Okay, well, they mean this. So, for example, geography O level, we were learning about Japan. 85% of Japan's volcanoes not built on, so 15% around the coast is where they build. And then the teacher said, and they've built skyscrapers on every square inch of Japan. So I burst out laughing, imagining every square inch has got a skyscraper on, which of course it hasn't. So then I get sent out for laughing and interrupting the class. And it's like, it's not my fault. She said something ridiculous, made me laugh, sent out. And yeah, so school was difficult for that, because it was too slow. I found it inefficient. So we'd get homework at school. So because there's somebody in the class, ask the teacher, "Can you explain this again? Can you explain that again?" You've got an hour-long, say, maths lesson. And what you learn, you could have learned in 5 minutes or 10 minutes just reading a book. And then you've got to spend half an hour doing homework that you didn't do in the lesson, because somebody who didn't understand kept asking for clarification. So that was an inefficiency, annoyed me. And then, of course, between lessons, you'd go from this class to that class. So that was another inefficiency. Why can't they put the classes near together? So little things that probably wouldn't bother anyone else was really difficult for me. But I didn't know. My parents knew I was smart, and I didn't. So my teachers would go to, like, all through school life, they'd go to the teachers' day, teacher parent evening, and they'd come back, and my mum would say things to me like, "Okay, yeah, you're okay at maths, but you could do better at your spelling." And I think I'm slightly dyslexic. My wife's convinced I'm dyslexic. "Your spelling could be better. Your handwriting could be neater." Many Aspies have awful handwriting. And she'd always come back and say these negative things. And it was either the last year of school or after I left school, I found out, probably after I got my O levels, that I was bright. I didn't realize. And years later, my mum told me, "Yeah, we knew you were smart, but we never wanted to tell you because we thought you might get big-headed about it." And so I went through school life not knowing. I knew I was in set 1 for stuff, but I didn't know that I was smart, because no one told me. I just thought other people were thick, which is not. I'm just being honest with my language here. People just seem thick to me, basically. They're shallow, insincere, and thick, and that is what most people are like. But that is not a problem. I can work with that. And if somebody's not bright, I can still get on with them fine. And there's absolutely no problem. What is difficult is when somebody pretends to be smart and talk nonsense, and they've got an opinion, but it's not a carefully thought out opinion. They've not actually got anything behind them. And you just ask them a few simple questions, they get all offensive and angry. It's like, well, hang on, but why did you even say that then? So, sorry. Yeah, school was difficult. I really didn't like school.
Juice? By the way, I loved what you said about reading literally, because yes, I get it. And this is very interesting for a Christian, and how you read your Bible. We'll hopefully come to that later on. The other thing is, of course, one of the fruit of the Spirit is patience. Now, that must be a real testing ground for you, I would imagine, with what you've been saying. What do you think? You patient, or?
I can be very, very patient and very gracious, I'd say, with people. It depends on the circumstances. No, now certainly the last several years, even before I knew I was Aspie, I was more aware some people will take longer to do a certain thing, and I accept it, and that's okay. Driving's a challenge. I can be very impatient with driving. So if I could be on a national road, it's a 60 limit, quite windy, it's not safe to overtake, and I come up to a tractor doing, say, 15, it doesn't bother me. I don't get heated. It's like, the tractor can only do 15. They're only going to go a few miles before they turn off, and I'm fine. But if I'm behind a car and they're doing like 35 in a 60, and there's no good reason for them to do it, there's a queue of cars behind, it's open road in front of them, that's more irritating, and I have less patience with that. And I'm thinking, how can you be so observant? Do you really not look in your mirror? And I imagine they're there thinking, this is a nice day for a drive. The roads are nice and clear. And they're backing up traffic 2 miles. Like, just pull over, let the cars go by, then come out again. So, yeah, it varies on the circumstances. But I would say in a lot of ways, I'm patient. With myself, I'm generally not patient, but that's okay because it's with me. But yeah, I mean, I can be patient. I can take my time. I try and get on the same level as the person and be understanding. I can genuinely be good friends with people who have all sorts of challenges intellectually, and I can genuinely get on fine with them and be fine with them because they're honest on the level they're at. But it's when they're at a level here and they pretend they're up here, I haven't got time for that. Not at all.
This is always going to be the challenge, because we're going to speak about something really controversial in a moment for many Christians. And that is the fact that when you are born again, you're filled with the Holy Spirit, then the fruit of the Spirit will develop, and we need to, when we know we've got weaknesses in this area, is to work on it. But never a truer word. It's when you have that ability to see the shallowness in people or others putting on an act, and knowing that there's a time to be gracious and to be patient, and knowing when you fall far short as well. Now, this controversial thing is, you mentioned the MBTI, which is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and it looks at personality typology. So it's introspective. This is something that we're taught not to do when we're Christians, to be introspective, but it's a self-reporting questionnaire, and it indicates the differing kind of psychological preferences in how people perceive the world and make decisions. Although, I mean, it is popular, but I think the scientific community kind of call it pseudoscience. So when you use that scale, and as I say, it's, as you know and I know, you're answering questions about yourself. How do you feel? Was that helpful to you when you were coming through for diagnosis?
The MBTI gives you 16 types of people. And then if somebody's a certain type, you know that they're going to act a certain way in a situation. Certain things will trigger them. Certain things make them comfortable. So if I know somebody's MBTI, I can interact with them on the correct level because I know what they're like. So, for example, there's a type ESFJ. I know that ESFJs care about small talk. They're feelers. They really care. I don't know what your type is here, so apologies for your ESFJ. ESFJs, the way they're perceived by other people is really, really important. So an ESFJ generally will not let their guard down until they know somebody really well. Until then, they will make out their life. Everything's in order, everything's fine. And they try and give out a certain way that they are. Whereas someone who's an INTJ or ENTJ, they just be straight to the point. You don't have to Monday morning say, hi, how's your weekend? You can go straight up to them and say, right, I need this Excel thing doing, da, da, da. And they won't perceive it as being rude at all. It's just factual, ding, 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 out there. Whereas an ESFJ, you go up to them on a Monday morning and say, I need you to do this for me. They think, how rude. Why doesn't he like me? I was like, what? It's like, we're at work, we're getting paid. Do this thing you're getting paid for. So massively, massively helps me knowing these 16 types. I understand the pseudoscience side of things. And certainly if you go as far to say, I'm this type, I need to marry someone or go out with somebody who's of one of these types and avoid these sort of people, then I can see where you might have problems with it. Or you find out you're married to the wrong type, maybe I should divorce them. I can see why that would cause you issues. But just knowing, so I've got a brother who's a type ENFJ, I think it is, which is known as social Jedi. Everyone loves him, and he would just talk to you and make, you know him, of course. He just makes people feel comfortable, and he can read a room naturally, and he just fits in, and he knows how to converse with people. But so he's always been very good with me. And when he found out I was Aspie, he was like, okay, everything makes sense now. And then he knew to interact differently with me. He knew to say what he means and that I mean what I say. And he can instantly change, whereas certain other types, maybe an ISFJ, find it a lot more difficult to accept that you're Aspie, and maybe it's just a personality trait, and no, I think you don't like me, no, you are being rude. And it's like, obviously you don't think that when you said this. That's what an ISFJ might be like. So so of the different types, if I knew a girl was INTJ or ENTJ and they said, do these trousers make me look fat, or do I look fat in these trousers? And I said, yeah, they won't be offended. They're after a factual statement. If an ISFJ or ESFJ says, do I look fat in these trousers? The truth doesn't matter. They want you to say something nice to them. But if you know what type they are, you, as a Christian, of course, you think, okay, how can I say things without lying? So you might be a bit more gracious and think, well, those trousers might be slightly better for you and this sort of thing. But yeah, it makes a huge, huge difference knowing it. But it's not some super mystical thing, because it's, to take it at its basic level, there are 4 letters. The I and the E is introvert or extrovert, and it's to do with how you recharge. It's not necessarily how you come across. So an introvert would recharge being on their own. An introvert would rather be in a library than maybe a football game or a concert or something. An extrovert recharges being with other people and chatting with them, or being at a concert. So knowing that simple level helps you interact with people. And it's, so you answer a question there, you find out, and it comes out you're introverted, you know you are, but if someone else knows you're introverted, they would know certain ways to treat you. And I monologued for ages there, sorry.
Small talk juice. And what I'd like to do is, I think we'll have a break after this, and possibly come back for the next program, because we've still got some really interesting stuff to chat about. So, small talk.
Generally, we hate small talk. We don't get small talk. So my brother, who's very patient, a few years ago, I really pushed him on small talk. Why do people small talk? And he gave an answer. No, that doesn't make sense. Why do they? Over and over. And eventually we got to the point, and my understanding now of small talk, the reason people small talk, whether they realize it or not, is to understand that the other person cares about them, and to let the other person know that they care. So you're at work Monday morning. How was your weekend? Oh, it was fine. What did you do? We had some people over for a barbecue. Oh, that was nice. Yes. And you talk about it. The substance of the conversation with small talk is completely unimportant. That's not what matters. What matters is you're showing that you care about them by spending the time to have this meaningless conversation. And that's pretty much what small talk's about. And to an Aspie, it's just so annoying. If you've got something to say, just say it. So when an Aspie meets another Aspie and you know the other one's Aspie, you relax. And it's great. So at the chess club, any chess club, there would be Aspies there because the way they are. There's 2 or 3 other Aspies at this chess club. And when we converse, we don't have to care about what we say to the other person. The other one is not going to get offended. Never any small talk. You don't need small talk. And it's great. It is just so refreshing. Whereas in normal life, I'm always using a certain amount of intellectual energy trying to think, how do I need to interact with this person? And so if I'm tired or ill, my barriers go down, because I just cannot afford to have so much brain power thinking about the interaction. So I come across as even more rude if I'm tired or ill. And it's like, we're called high functioning because we have to work so hard to come across as what we think is normal. Because if we didn't do that, most people would find us very unpleasant.
I think the words that probably used to be used were odd or eccentric. And just the thing is, the proclivity, there are, I know so many people who are Asperger, so many. And I've had this conversation so often with people who know about it, let's just put it that way. And I say, was it ever thus? Have there always been lots and lots of Asperger people? It's not just eccentric old people, it's all kinds of folks. So just what I'd like to do is I'd just like to thank you so much for this first part. And if you don't mind, we will do a part 2. And dear viewer, let me tell you what we've still to talk about, because there's the emotional side, the 5 love languages, sexuality, political correctness, burnout, parenting, employment, your expected life expectancy. So some really interesting things still to talk about. So just look out for the next program in episode 2. But I'd just like to thank you so much just now. Midnight Mule. We'll put a link to your YouTube channel there. So thank you so much. Until the next
pleasure.
part. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
This is GV247.tv, bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live. A powerful free resource with hundreds of short films on a wide range of Bible topics from experts around the world, plus full-length sermons and programs for teaching and encouragement. Choose from current affairs, signs of the times, a chance to voice your own opinion, and special offers on our full-length feature films, documentaries, and study materials. At over 4 hours in length, the Lamplight Project is a systematic 12-part Bible study series, a powerful teaching tool that begins with the origins of life and takes the viewer on a comprehensive journey packed with high-profile interviews, film, graphics, and illustrations, concluding with the return of Christ and an encouragement to stand firm and be faithful. Complete with a free study guide download for both personal and group study, this powerful interactive guide connects to over 1,000 programs with expert interviews on GV247.tv, our free service web TV channel. Does My Life Have Meaning? A powerful 1-hour presentation produced from the Lamplight Project. With a free copy of the Gospel of Luke, this film is crammed with engaging interviews, film and graphics, a life-challenging film to those searching for answers. As distributors for the Jesus film, we offer this timeless movie based on Luke's Gospel. This clear presentation of the life of Jesus Christ has been viewed worldwide and translated into over 1,200 languages. We provide the film with a free copy of the Gospel of Luke. The Daniel Project is a popular TV documentary that presents an overview of Bible prophecy and an encouragement to read the signs of the times. Hailed as one of the best TV films to be made on the subject, DVD extras feature a heart-to-heart interview about the way of rescue. Based loosely on the documentary, The Daniel Connection is a full-length feature film. This fictional thriller incorporates many of the themes promoted through pop culture and social media which affect people on a global scale. Launched at the Cannes Film Festival, The Daniel Connection points the ever-skeptical viewer to search the Bible for answers to life's deepest questions. We've been serving the body of Christ for over 30 years, and if you would like further information, please do not hesitate to get in touch.